Hey Fremont family, so good to see you, to be with you. My name's Tana Kinder and I'm one of the elders here at Fremont, and today I'm going to share a devotion with you on Matthew chapter 16. Um, I really like the fact that the first four books of the New Testament have a lot of overlaps. There's all these parables that Christ has been sharing, and that the first four books have different authors that share a lot of the same parables, but they have their own way of presenting the information. And not that they're straying from the tenets of the parable, but that they have certain terminology they use or certain things that kind of struck them more so than maybe one of the other authors. And that's just their personalities coming through. This makes me think of how Christ handpicked his disciples, and they're very different people. They have very different personalities and they have very different flaws. And I don't point that out because I'm like happy that they have flaws, but I find it reassuring to know that the people that Jesus picked to be the start of this new church and this Christ following group were flawed and had struggles, because I know I do. And so I know that if he hand selected them and he taught them, and he loved them and he prayed with them and for them, that that gives me hope in my walk and in my journey, knowing that I don't do it perfectly, but I know that Christ loves me, and that his word is as true today as it was then, and that he is patient with, as patient as he was with them, he is patient with me. So that will, with that information, that kind of just leads me into the devotion today. There are a number of parables in chapter 16, and I'm not going to tell you, that I think you should focus in on this one or that one. What I'm going to suggest is that you spend a little time praying, thinking about where you are in life right now, what's going on, and then just asking God to put on your heart what he wants you to focus in on. Go through and read the whole chapter, and then just think about what kind of stood out for you, or what do you want to circle back and kind of look at a little bit more closely, or you have questions about, and then ask God to just kind of really, work through that with you, and to challenge you spiritually in your spiritual walk and in your growth. For me, I feel like I want to focus in on the second one, where Jesus warns against wrong teaching. I love that he is sharing this parable with them, and he's warning them against the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And he says, be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And this should be something that they should get, because he's used references about being the bread of life. They know that there's yeast in bread. They know how it can make the bread grow. And yet they don't get it. And for me, again, that's kind of just reassuring, but I'm kind of like, how is it they don't get this? They've been with him for so long. They have heard him share what being a Christ follower is. I mean, they have been able to ask him questions directly. He prays with them, and yet he says to them, how is it you don't understand that I was not talking to you about bread? And I could, just see them all kind of like looking at each other and scratching their head like, well, what do you mean? You were talking about yeast. I mean, this is just, to me, it's funny, but it's also reassuring. And there's a lot going on here. It's just like real life in action. And then he goes on to break it down for them. And he reminds them of the miracles that he has already performed with the use of bread. And that, to me, is also, it's just a little humorous, but it's also like, come on, guys. And then the parable ends with them, with the saying, then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. He's patient with them. He goes through and he breaks it down when he realizes they don't understand. And I just love that about Jesus. And I love that about the disciples, that even though they were at the teacher's feet, that they still didn't always get it right, or they didn't fully understand. And despite that, look at where the church is today. It has grown, it's on every continent, and Jesus is not going to be discouraged by us. He's going to be patient with us. So for me, the lesson and why I'm drawn into this is to not be discouraged, but to be patient and to just keep my eyes on him, and to look at the world with my faith filter, with my filter of scripture, my filter of Christ, my filter of my Christian fellowship, and to remember that is where my focus needs to be in reading the scripture, but particularly right now with these parables. So I hope that is helpful to you, and that you enjoy your time in the Word today. Take care.